one of the things you've heard me talk about is my belief that you should structure your perception of the relevance and prominence of political movements and worldviews, ideologies, based on how those things are being represented in positions of power. How are they manifesting themselves into positions of power, not just how often are they being talked about online, for example. And it's so important. One of the things that, and we're going to get to, by the way, in this segment, an example of why this is such an important way to approach these conversations. But one of the things that people admit is that it's at least a possibility of a problem, and probably is a problem right now, of political sides in an attempt to more effectively fight back against the other side, dishonestly or inaccurately portraying the other side's views, or at least the prominence of certain parts of their movement's views. And so this comes up a lot when we talk about the right wing constantly fear-mongering about the horrible threat to society that the left is. Wokeness, they'll say, this huge fear-mongering operation about wokeness. And you'll have some people that are kind of moderate or even some center left who really believe, based on the fear-mongering, that there is this big problem in the United States, this threat of whatever the right wing has depicted as wokeness now. And what I'll say in those conversations is, if I'm given an example of a left-winger who is saying something just ridiculous, okay, but how does that view reflect itself or manifest itself, as I'll say, into positions of power? That's how I will judge how relevant it is to our political conversation. And often, for example, one of the things I've heard is the left thinks that if you're white, you should hate yourself. Who on the left? Bring me this person. And I'm sure there is a person, because in a country of this size, every single view will have been espoused. And now that this country has within it, and the world, social media, that view will become really, really, really talked about online and seem maybe like a problem when it isn't necessarily a part of a larger political movement, because outrage, engagement is what sells online. And so they'll grow a big discussion around them if they're saying, yeah, white people should hate themselves. And it's not something that you'll hear any Democratic politician, left-wing politician, believe in. Of course not. And that's why I don't spend much time talking about what you would maybe call left-wing extremism, because I just don't see it represented into positions of power right now, even though there is left-wing extremism, of course. But I talk a whole lot about right-wing extremism. Why? Because of MAGA that has positions of power. It's not just a nebulous thing out there that maybe there are some social media accounts espousing. No, in positions of power, a president, Trump, and now former president running for president, Marjorie Greene, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, all these people with actual positions of power, or media figures that espouse views that influence those in positions of power, and the people in positions of power reflect those very views, right? So that's been my thing for a while. Don't just look at how much kind of your media says, look, here's an example of someone annoying on Twitter. That's not going to give you a sense of actual relevant political views, but instead the politicians, those who reflect the views of the politicians, etc. Okay, with all that being said, I have an example of why that is so dang important. This is from the Washington Post. A viral left-wing Twitter account may have been fake all along. In 8 months, Erica Marsh has become one of the most consistently viral left-wing voices on Twitter, gaining more than 130,000 followers for her hyper-liberal, often melodramatic opinions on the biggest flashpoints in American news. She's been especially popular with conservatives, who promoted her as a perfect symbol of how overly theatrical and insane liberals can be, like when she attacked the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision last week by saying no black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system. Great example. Who would say that? Well, a fake account. And let me say again, I have interacted with actual really annoying people who identify as liberals. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm not saying dumb views aren't espoused, dumb people don't, all of it, yes. But we're talking about a larger political discussion that we have to tap into what actually is relevant, not every view that exists in this country, because there's tons of them. This article continues. The proud Democrat in Washington, as she described herself on Twitter, doesn't show up in any local phone or voting records. The Biden presidential campaign, where she says she worked as a field organizer, has no record of her. Neither does the Obama Foundation, where she claimed to have volunteered. Her only other known social media profile on TikTok posts copies of her tweets, but has never included her speaking or showing her face. And a digital imaging expert said the 3 purported selfies she's posted on Twitter showing a young, smiling blonde woman bear the hallmarks of digital manipulation. So this, what was her name? Erica Marsh might just be a fabrication. So why am I saying this? To remind you, look at who is relevant so that we can have good political conversations. And be careful basing your political views on who shouts at you on Twitter. Super, super important. And don't fall into this enlightened centrist, just because there's 2 sides, I have to squarely be right in between with my views because that means I'm the most reasonable. No. What you should fight for is what is correct, what is reasonable, what is common sense. And right now, in this current political environment, it's not far on the left. It's just reasonable common sense policies that happen to fall to the left of kind of the center line you would draw. Because right now, the right wing is pulling that other line, the line that makes the middle split where it splits, so far to the right, outrageously so, that to split the middle between outrageously so and maybe some views you find too far left. For example, there are socialists, I don't think necessarily, in the Democratic Party, very sporadically, kind of here and there, but some socialists, that's further left than I am. But kind of to say that further left than you are and Marjorie Greene, I got to be in between of that. Why? Why would you have to split the middle? That doesn't make sense. And this is a reminder of that to me. Not that there aren't also outrageous people who are real, who are on the left as well, but are they representing themselves in positions of power? That's where you get your answer. And this reminds me of, this is reported on from The Independent. We talked about this a while ago. Donald Trump Jr. ridiculed as he falls for parody Twitter account calling for Aretha Franklin ban. And what this was a fake account that also was pretending to be liberal, said that the song Natural Woman by Aretha Franklin was being canceled by the woke mob because it's offensive to trans women. And that wasn't happening. It was just a made up thing by this Twitter account. And then Don Jr. was like, see, this is what the woke mob is doing. I have to repeat this one more time. It's not that there aren't actual annoying people who identify on the left, liberal, woke, whatever. It's that that's not relevant to a larger political conversation about what our reaction to different political views should be, how urgent different political problems are, and which politicians we should support. Because right now, it's just not even close. While far from perfect, the Democratic Party is just millions of miles ahead of the Republican Party on so many of these crucial issues.